All right, we are live. Hello, welcome to the Financial Advocacy Podcast. I'm your host, David Kinder, registered financial consultant, chartered life underwriter, here with my co-hosts, Kurt Gibbs and Mike Moffat. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about uninterrupted compound interest. And that's a topic that we talk about here in our financial group pretty often. In fact, the logo essentially is the compound interest curve and such in how it goes. When you guys first heard about this, what were some of your thoughts, especially with all of your past experience? Kurt, let's start with you, because obviously you've been a registered rep. We've worked with investments and such, and it's part of the overall success that we want for our clients. We want their wealth to grow. What were your thoughts when you started learning about some other ways to help people achieve uncommon success? Let's put it that way.
Well, the industry, as we've talked about, in previous episodes of how they have kind of taught us as agents and advisors, incorrectly, really, about how compounding really works and what you have to do to maintain that uninterrupted curve as you speak about. I think there's a lot of gray area, if you will, in uninterrupted compounding, just because of as an advisor, they may sell you on the fact that you've got to do dollar cost averaging. You've got to put money in, every month, and that there's no other way to get that compounding unless you leave it into something for 20, 30, 40 years, and the rule of 72 and different things. I think there's a lot of ways now that kind of prove that to be, not true.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily have to take the risks that we've been told that we need to take in order to have that really work for us. Mike, what are your thoughts? You're coming in from primarily the insurance background, not necessarily having been securities licensed. We talked about that, I think, last time or the time before. Uninterrupted compound interest.
Well, I think we kind of talk about this a little bit in our book that we have, where if you stop contributing to your plan, how badly that affects it, and then you have to be in the plan and constantly contributing for that entire period of time to even hope to get that. And that's if there's a positive rate of return. And of course, the rate of return is a lot more important on the distribution side than it is on the accumulation side. So you have to constantly be putting money into the thing, and if you take a break, that really affects the overall growth of any kind of 401k, IRA type of account that you can have. So if there was a way that you could put money in and not necessarily have to contribute anymore after a certain amount of years, then still maintain the compounding of interest and be able to use it as a collateral asset, that would sound like the ideal type of vehicle to have.
Oh, you're getting to the cheat code there, Mike. We'll get to the cheat codes later.
I think people too don't realize that we do have strategies that are available out there to anyone that can really compress the uninterrupted compounding into a shorter time frame with not necessarily more money to contribute, but to maximize that in a shorter time frame than traditional financial planning teaches us or says to to put money in at a fixed dollar amount or a fixed percentage, and you've got to do that over that 20 or 30 years. I just think there are several ways that we can really benefit from doing it over a shorter period of time, maybe with not as much money or more money to get the same or better compounding out of the strategy that you choose.
Sure. And so let's put our own, I'll call it proprietary strategy. Let's put that to the side for right now. Let's talk about overall compounding of wealth. And this is a question, I think the first time I heard it was Stand and Deliver. I think it's in that movie. I can't recall. But the question was, would you rather have $100,000 today or a penny doubling every day for 30 days? And, the real question is, do we understand the math, and are we willing to wait the 30 days or the 30 periods, whatever it is, to collect on that? And how much would that money actually be? So I've got a spreadsheet. I put this together some time ago, and I'm going to let everybody cheat because here's the answer. You have a penny doubling every day for 30 days. And at day 30 by itself, you're at $5.3 million. A total of 10.7 million if it all accumulates, add it all up together. It's a massive amount. The question is are we willing to wait? And up until about day 22, 23, you'd be feeling pretty good about that 100,000 you took up front. All this stuff beforehand, there's a very technical term for it. I just was reminded about this, I think, last week. The technical term for it is that it's boring. It is the most boring part, is the early part of trying to compound our wealth. We're starting to put some money in there, and we realize that ain't doing a whole lot. I mean, day 1, you had a penny. Day 10, $5.12 on day 10 alone. But, I might have $10. So what? It's not sexy. So it's very boring at first. Now, here's the thing. And there's nothing in financial services that works this way. Even doubling every year for 30 years, it does not exist. But this is an interesting mathematical exercise to help us understand the decisions that we're sometimes considering and how we go about building our wealth. So the first one, obviously that's the penny doubling every day. The next one is what happens if we delay 1 day's worth of compounding? Whoops. It's a spreadsheet here, and it's over a few things here. So here I picked day 15 where it didn't double. We just kept it the same. We didn't lose, but we didn't gain anything. What happens? Well, we're only 1 day behind, which in this instance, yeah, it cost you half as much, but really you're fine. You wait another day, you've got your 10 million. It's not a big deal. But what happens when, and this happens quite often, what happens when we raid the account and we take it back down to 0? And then we start the compounding all over again. And so in this example, I took it out. Here in day 7, nothing. You didn't put anything else in. And then we restarted the clock for day 8. What happens? You didn't have $10.7 million. You've got 83,000. And again, nothing exists like this, but it just shows the consequences if we don't have enough of our money working for us. Now, if you think that one's bad, imagine if we did it later. So I picked the next one over. I picked day 16. So you liquidate everything out in day 16 and start over again. You don't have $10 million. You have barely $500. It's just such a big deal when the compounding stops and you raid the account and then start over again. So where the cost is if we delay, well, actually not if we delay, if you just take the money out and restart, it's huge. This one I worked on last night a little bit. This is the same kind of thing, but instead of raiding the account, you have a loss on a particular day. And so the loss looks like, you're going backwards a little bit. We've all heard other people in our industry, they say, where does it say in finance that in order to make money, you have to lose 30, 50, 70% of your money in order to make money? And I do know where it says that. It says that that volatility is the price we pay for higher returns, which is kind of an odd saying in and of itself. But if we start doubling our pennies and then we go backwards a little bit, we keep doubling again, go backwards a little bit. This is 5 times where that basically happens. And it's not terrible in our total scheme of things, but it definitely could have been a whole lot better if we could avoid the losses. So I just wanted to share that this is obviously nothing works like this, but it's a representation of our decisions, our choices, and how are we making our financial decisions long term? Are we waiting too long? Are we raiding our account? What's our justification for raiding the account in order to, now I remember years ago we had someone come in and they wanted to liquidate their entire 401k. And this was about 15 years ago. They had maybe $130,000 in their 401k and they're using it to buy a house. And it makes me wonder, do they really think through all of that decision to do that? Now, we covered that, was it last week? We covered mortgages. Mm-hmm. Every 100,000 that you could have had, if it was able to earn that 12%, that's $3 million. I don't think they completely thought through that.
But yeah, I mean, it's a huge, yeah, I mean, it's just a huge a lot of moving parts and a lot of factors to not understanding, the optimal way to use your money in more than one place, and take out the factor that just like you talk about sequence of returns risk, and all the factors that take in, just like what you're talking about here in this chart. I mean, 1 or 2 days, or where your money's at, on the day and the month and the year you retire. So many factors play into really how much money am I going to wind up with at an X date somewhere out in the future. And it just takes a little bit of getting off course, or not staying disciplined enough to see things through, to completely change really your entire retirement life, or your retirement investment portfolio, or whatever you're looking at. It's just it's really shocking to see that just such a small change could have such a dramatic effect.
Compounding negative returns.
Yeah,
it's just, and I know there's another term for it. I look at as a reverse dollar cost averaging. It's funny when the market goes down, the news basically says, hold on to your weight, which is fine and generally probably good advice. But then they say, you should be putting more money in. What more money? Do we really have all that much more money on the sidelines ready to be put into the market to be timed that way? And the vast majority of people don't, at least according to traditional financial advice.
Well, and you kind of hear on TV too, if you follow the markets a little bit, especially like on a down day, or a down week or something, and you'll hear some of these guys on television, or maybe even your advisor say, well, you bought shares cheaper this week. Well, yes and no. There's so many things to the average client, average investor out there that they're told that is not exactly it's not exactly totally true. You wind up just dollar cost averaging those dollars back into your plan, and you don't carve out shares at a discount or whatever. It's just for the average Joe out there, it's we've just overcomplicated things, and this right here is kind of along the same line as just complicating things, not understanding all the moving parts, and just how little or how much something will affect your end result.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that is just human nature, which is what we're primarily talking about at this point. And the other part of human nature is delaying getting started, started on a plan. And part of that kind of was solved with the Pension Protection Act of 2006. Because I think back then, this was back, of course, George Bush was president, and there was this new law put into place where it required new employees that are new to a company to automatically enroll them into their company's 401k plan. And then the employee would have to opt out if they did not want to do it. And why? It's so that they can get something started. And I'd say that's a pretty good law. I don't like anybody making my financial decisions for me, but I'm also more knowledgeable to know what decisions I should be making, what I shouldn't be doing, and such. So I kind of appreciate that law, but I see it on both sides. I don't need the government to tell me what I should be doing. One of the things I still want to talk about is the cost of delay, because let's suppose we had this option and we could double a penny for 30 days, which would be fantastic. Believe me, sign me up for that program. But what if we waited 5 days to get started? And the issue of that is that we don't feel the pain up front because it starts the exact same way. But if we're waiting 5 days, the cost is in the back end. So we lose out those last 5 days of growth, which would have been astounding. And we've got essentially the cumulative total. Instead of the 10 million, we'd have 335,000. Again, if this really existed, which of course, if we wait 10 years, it's even worse because we have none of that third column here. You've only got 10 grand, not 10 million. So getting started on something where possible is the greatest thing. If we can help people to get out of their debt and start building wealth and do that as quickly as we can for somebody, they're going to be far better off. Mike, you've been a little quiet, although your dog back there really wants to make her voice known. I know that she's an advocate based on her interruption here. What are your thoughts here so far?
Well, yeah, that goes back to kind of what Kurt was saying with the house and the $100,000 for every 100,000 that you put down, if you can, in theory, like Dave Ramsey says, get 12% every year, for every $100,000 that you put down, you really made a $3 million, or really, if you take out the 100,000, a $2.9 million mistake over the cost of a working career. So a lot of people like to say that, your house is an appreciating asset, but that's another discussion. It's really not. And so why would you put as much money down on your house as you possibly can, when in reality, if you just put down the minimum and invest the rest into the stock market, like Dave says, wouldn't you come out way ahead? And especially if you started younger, as this chart shows, with that, compounding of interest and having the money in there longer and getting your magical 12%, whereas your mortgage rate is maybe even today 6.5. You're still doubling your money over the period of time. So following some of that advice doesn't always make sense, and it in fact puts people in harm's way more than they realize. And now, even if that does work, you're in the highest tax bracket possible. So when you go to withdraw the money, so now you've taken a deduction on a lower amount to pay a tax on a higher amount in the future. It just doesn't necessarily make sense to do those things.
Well, and it's kind of like we've heard this so many times, and I won't say there's something wrong with it, but I'll say there's a better way to do this. How many times do we come across those individuals that are in a position, that have the assets, have the cash to do so, but they want to save up a X amount of dollars to buy a vehicle, and they interrupt that compounding. They spend that money, and then they're back at that baseline of zero, and then they save up, and then they spend the money. And there's just better ways to do that most people are just not aware of. That gets into the collateral conversation that I'm sure we're going to dive into a little bit here. But there's much better ways to spend other people's money, and as we talk in the group, kind of keep your money close to your chest.
There we go. Yeah. So that brings up a couple of points. So the first one I'm thinking of is, does the government know about this? Because, quite frankly, being able to tax our wealth is a big key thing that drives taxation in everything that we do. So let's do some simple math, and let's suppose that we're 35 years old. So we waited a little bit, but we're going to start doing $10,000 a year contributions into a IRS qualified retirement plan of some kind. And it almost doesn't matter which one, as long as you can actually do it. And if you're in the 20% tax bracket, then out of $10,000 being put in, you have a postponement of $2,000 worth of taxes each year. So $10,000 contribution, $2,000 quote unquote deduction. You have a net $8,000 in there. Now, so say we're doing that for 30 years. So we would have put in $300,000 into the plan, and we would have saved $60,000 in taxes, assuming 20% flat on the whole thing. And so we put in 300,000. Let's suppose the thing grows to $1 million. 3 times our money or so is not a bad overall compounded return. I haven't even done the math of what that return would literally be. But if we start taking that money out, let's suppose out of 100,000, now we should be taking out 2.8%, but let's suppose that we're going to ignore some of that. Suppose we're pulling out $40,000 or 4%. 4% coming out, 20% tax bracket. What is that? 40,000 and 20. That's $8,000 in taxes, flat rate. We got to keep the equation the same on both sides. So if we're talking about flat taxes on both ends, $8,000. We save 60. It would take. I didn't do the math right on that. 8,000 divided by 60. Still didn't do the math on that, but that's okay. What's the math? 6 years or so? No, 7 years. 7.5 years before we break even on all of the savings. And how long are we going to be retired for? And that's assuming that the tax bracket didn't change at all. No bracket creep happened. So who's this plan better for? Is it better for us, or is it better for the federal government?
Yeah.
I'd be Mike.
It also assumes that tax rates didn't change either.
Right. Yeah, and we know that with our government, do we really want to be in a arrangement with our wealth with a government that really doesn't seem to be held accountable to anybody for how they're spending the tax dollars, actually how they're spending the credit available so they can finally charge us the taxes to try to make up for it. So to me, that's just not wise.
Well, it just goes back to our earlier conversations that we've had previously about, unqualified plans and IRS approved plans. I guess we could use that type of verbiage with it. It's just there are so many different ways now. If you use some common sense to think about getting the maximum compounding out of your dollar, spending $1 and $1 as if it was three. The distribution side being the most important aspect of building your wealth, not necessarily the accumulation side. So many variables, and the uninterrupted compounding, along with the fact that just a day here, a month here, what really affects the outcome of the value of your dollar is it can be devastating. It can just be devastating to what you're thinking you're going to be able to accomplish with saving money for retirement.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen here again because we've got the booklets, and of course I got a PowerPoint that goes with those booklets. And you were talking about this earlier, is that when you're borrowing and then you're repaying it over time. And of course, what happens when we're borrowing? We are, obviously we're in debt, and we're in debt usually to another lender. And most people hate being in debt. I think we all feel that way. And yet we're in debt because of our spending. Sometimes it's medical stuff, but it's usually our spending, and we feel the need that we're going to justify this debt and we're going to pay it back because it's far better to be in this debt than to deal with whatever else is going on. But the borrower is slave to the lender. That's a biblical phrase. We know that. But, as we can look at that image there, we go down in debt, we start paying it back, assuming that we're a good borrower. And then we go back into debt, we pay it back. And we're usually paying interest rates somewhere between 5 to 18%, sometimes more, just depends on what kind of debt we're talking about. So that's the borrowing and repaying model. Then there's the saving to spend model. This is people that are saving up money and then they buy the car. They save up money again, and then they think they're going to buy another car. Now, granted, most people are keeping their cars a whole lot longer these days. Hopefully, you've got a good car that will last, holding on to it for a while. But the problem is that you no longer have that money once it's spent, and you don't have what that money could have been earning for you once it's spent. So that's what we call lost opportunity cost. You could have, if there was a way to keep that money and keep it growing, would that be worthwhile to do? And so compared to the repeat borrower, you are better off. But what if there's still a better way? And the better way exists, and we talk about buying cars. Suppose we get a new car that's only $500 a month, which doesn't really exist much anymore. And if it does, I'm not sure I'd want that car. Cars are not the same these days. I just got to say that. But if we're doing $500 a month from age 30 to age 60, but every time our car loan matures, we trade in the car and we get another car to keep the payments the same. And so $500 a month for 30 years is $180,000 in principal payments alone. We're not even including interest. But if we could have a modest interest rate cost of just 5%, those loans would cost us almost $400,000. And we're not even including registration, repairs, maintenance, or insurance. All while we're trying to put money to a 401k at the same time, trying to accumulate it as much as possible in that 401k. Assuming we can earn, let's say, 8% a year. We're paying $400,000 in order to try to earn 5% or 8% in our 401k. And there's a huge $1 million difference between what you're trying to save in the debt payments versus what you're trying to accumulate in the 401k. We're not even including the taxes on that yet. So, and that's not even including a second car for your spouse. So there is the wealth creator financial model. And what that is when you can actually use the same dollars at the same time and negating much of all that risk. So we build up an account, or in this case, a contract. You got to build it up first so that there's some collateral to borrow against. You borrow against it. You keep contributing to the contract, but then you're also repaying the loan so you can borrow against it again. And so you're contributing and borrowing against the same asset, the same contract. So we can borrow against a life insurance wealth contract. And life insurance, specifically whole life insurance, is the only asset where the lender is guaranteeing the growth of the asset you're borrowing against. It will never go backwards in value, other than cost of interest. There's a loan interest cost that can be charged against the policy. So you just have to be an honest borrower and pay that interest at least each year, which is far less expensive than doing principal and interest payments to other car lenders. So there's other ways to go. So you can have your growth, have your cake, and eat it too. Literally eating it. So I just wanted to share that. I just remembered this thing this morning. So, let me go back to this because this is a good slide here. There's so many different ways to do this. Close that out. Stupid thing. That's okay. Share my screen again. And because you can use this not just for borrowing funds for a car. Add back. There we go. You can use it for tax-exempt retirement planning, have it for an emergency fund, and by getting money out of the against these contracts. I just tell people usually it's 5 to 10 days. Should be quicker. If you need money quicker, you got a credit card, right? You probably even have some money in the bank. Everybody should have some of that. But if you want bigger wealth that's more strategic, you can get it from the insurance company. They'll just wire it or ACH it over to your account, 5 to 10 days maximum. You can use it for opportunities that come up in business. And there's a whole nother topic we can talk about that. If you wanted to pay off your mortgage faster, you could do it by transitioning it from being a loan against your home to transitioning to being a loan against your life insurance. That's a possibility, but you got to look at the tax consequences on that. Using it for business expenses, children's college educations, buying cars, we talked about vacations and weddings, debt consolidation, rental real estate investing. There's so many ways that this could be utilized. It's practically unlimited. And so that's why, an industry colleague of ours, Caleb Gilliams, he wrote the book called The And Asset. It doesn't have to be, do I do one thing or another? It's, can I do both with the same dollars at the same time? What could that look like? And that's what I like to help people do so that they don't have to stop the uninterrupted compounding of their asset, and especially if they could do so on a tax-exempt basis. And that's what these life insurance contracts can do. Tax-exempt growth. It is slower because you do have costs of insurance. I'm not telling you that your balance is going to be the same as if you put in a 401k. But the neat thing is that we can show you how having $1 in life insurance can spend better than $3 to $5 in that 401k. So it's a comprehensive conversation about all of it that if we put you in the right position, you'll be so much better off having less money in the right place. All right, I went on a diatribe there, but you guys chime in. What are you thinking here?
Well, let's not forget that if you have it set up correctly, the cost of insurance will go away after 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how you structure the contract. So you're only really dealing with that cost of insurance for a limited amount of time. And after that, then you're just purely getting that compounding of money, and you still have access to it. So the cost of insurance is a portion of it during that early years where, that 10, 20 years, depending on how you set the policy up. But after that, that cost of insurance is totally gone. So once you get rid of that, now you just have the growth.
And for anybody that's a real nerd about this stuff like I can be, the cost of insurance doesn't necessarily go away, but it doesn't become a liability of the policy. It becomes a liability of the insurance company. They are the ones that have to keep everything on the books, because as long as you've met your contractual obligations by making the payments for that limited period of time, we're talking about a limited pay contract, like 10 years, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. After that, it's on the insurance company. So it's no longer a liability on the policy. It's up to the insurance company to pay it because you already prepaid it. So that's for anybody that really wants to, be an extra nerd about it, because I am. So anybody that's curious.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what we've obviously previously talked about. I'm amazed at how our government, you know, going back into the '80s when 401k plans, you know, were introduced and qualified plans, how that we've gotten away from really the time tested products that have been around for 100+ years that deliver guaranteed returns, uh, are contractually guaranteed to do what they say they will do, and provide you with ways to use that money, without, you know, taxation or without penalty, or just be as a client that's taking a look at doing different things, to increase your nest egg, or to plan for retirement. Just be aware that anything that is government sponsored is going to have limitations to it that benefit them far greater than you, and it's just ultimately up to you to make that decision, and do what's in your best interest. Because I just hear you guys talking, and I hear so many people talking on radio and TV and CNBC, and you know, all these, anything that has to do with the markets, and it's just we've just gotten consumed by what's on television about it, and no one wants to talk about the facts of what really does work and what, you know, what doesn't work, because everyone's got a narrative for what they're wanting to talk about, and how it benefits them better than you. It's just I just wish more people would really get back to the simplicity of how to accumulate wealth and how to keep it, how to hang on to it.
Well, let's also go back in time, because, and I've been a student of history on some of this advice and things over time. Quite frankly, I think it's primarily since the new social media age that most of the truth about how stuff works is coming out. Now, unfortunately, we're not only just getting truth, we're getting a lot of myth and we're getting a lot of mistruths out there, but we got so much more being shared than we ever did before. And if I remember all of these presentations I studied from the 80s, from insurance producers, especially some of the biggest ones, they took such great pride in the fact that people weren't taking loans against their policies. Companies actively discouraged using your policy. They just want you to build it up, but they don't necessarily want you using it, pulling money out against it. I'm like, well, if you're not pulling money out against it, why are you building that? You know, what is the point? Obviously, it's the reserve for the death benefit. Totally get that. But if I could use it and enhance other things in my financial life, why wouldn't I want to do that? Um, but even then, I mean, I still remember there's this book. It's a life insurance book. It's called The Tired Tirade by Halsey Josephson. This was printed in 1969, and basically, it's a whole book written to combat against buy term and invest the difference. I mean, they still had the same issues back then as they have today, but the real truth isn't really out there. And it's coming to light far better than it is these days than it ever has been in the past. So when we can help people to actually become millionaires, and I mean that seriously. In fact, I was just reaching over to grab the book. This is Tom Hegna's. You can barely see it, but Tom Hegna's "Who Wants to Be a Millionaire" book. And I'm in here for 5 pages talking about how you can leverage yourself against a life insurance policy, buy into the market at whatever investment you're comfortable with, watch that thing grow back, especially when the government says we're going to stimulate the economy. And then you watch that grow, hold on to it for over 12 months because we want long-term capital gain treatment on that, sell it off, pay back your loan, and keep the difference. And of course, paying taxes on that. But there's better ways to not be a victim of the market as long as we're able to set up a contract, you leverage it prudently and intelligently to put that money to work for you, and you'd be far better off. Because, you know, quite frankly, the system today, the advice given today is so broken. It's based on old ideas that just don't hold water today anymore. And I just want people to be as empowered as possible to to take charge of their financial futures.
Yeah,
All right, that was a diatribe.
well, you know, and I was going to mention this before you even mentioned, you know, Tom Hagner's book. There was, you know, as most people know that know us know that the group that we're involved in, and Tom Love has a really good book that he's published and put out here just recently on the life insurance book of understanding that's just come available, I think, on Amazon. So anyone out there that wants to read, understand what we advocate for and the reason why. It takes people like Tom Love and Tom Hagner that are so passionate about what they do that they're sharing the truths and the nuts and bolts of how to do things differently, how to kind of be the zebra in the room, if you will, and go a different direction, go a narrow path, but it's the path that is going to it's not a sexy product. I mean, annuities do what they do, as Tom Hagner is such an advocate for, and Tom Love's such an advocate for what life insurance does if done properly. And there's so many better ways. Such a better way to get to the truth of how products work. And I'm thankful that people like Tom are so passionate about what they do that they sit down and write a book about everything that you need to know about understanding that. And if you're serious about your retirement, I think those are a couple of books that you need to go pick up and make a thorough read and make notes and maybe read it a couple of times and do it in a short time of frame. Don't read a couple of pages and come back to it in a year. Read it, understand it the best you can, and then speak with someone like ourselves about on the life insurance side or the annuity side that is well versed in those topics and those products that can educate you and not sell you and let you make an informed decision based off really the facts. Because there's a lot of there's 13,000 books we know on why not to have any type of insurance product or Ken Fisher's annuity, quotes. There's all kinds of stuff. There's garbage out there everywhere. But I would advocate that those two guys are at the top of their game, have been for many, many years. And there's 100% truth in what they write about and what they advocate for.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And let me put my bias out there. I help contribute things to both of those books. So
Exactly.
there we go. So, I don't know. They must see something in me, and I'm just glad to be able to have a little bit of participation. Although I wish they'd share some of the royalties with me, but that's a whole nother conversation. But
well, we're blessed and lucky to be involved with some of the industry icons that are out there that are spreading good word about products that deliver and are time tested. And we're not throwing things up against the wall, so to speak, to see what kind of mud sticks like a mutual fund portfolio or qualified plans do. They're put in place to benefit someone other than you. And that's just the point that I just really want to drive home to any of the people out there that are listening to this or find this that are confused. I mean, basically confused on which direction do I go, what do I do? Get some education from from passionate people that appreciate what they've learned and what they've been taught over the years. And we've all gotten educated from other sources throughout the years. There's a lot of industry icons that have come and gone in this space, and I just think we've gotten away from what is simple and what works. And I think the industry as a whole needs to get back to that as far as doing what's right for our clients.
yeah, and it takes a well-rounded person, because here's the other side of that. As a consumer, who am I looking to get me advice that's good for me? And it's tougher as a consumer. Do I look for someone who belongs to certain professional associations? Well, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. It does mean that they should be a student of their business if they're actively involved in those associations. Do you look for someone that has certain designations? Well, as you can tell, I've got some letters after my name, but so what? You guys don't necessarily have letters after your name, but we're right there. We are all sharing our knowledge, and you are just as knowledgeable as I am on many of these topics. So designations are not the equivalent or the defining be all and end all. How does the consumer choose? And it can't just be what we want to hear. And I think, to me, if there's anything that I would want someone to figure out for themselves is, are they doing it to you or for you? Are they really trying to serve your best interest? And the question, you can generally sense that. But then again, you can sense that from actual criminals too. So I mean, Bernie Madoff was very, very good at that kind of thing. It's really difficult. And so one of the nice things about us, at least, is that, well, we're putting ourselves out there. I think people can generally tell that we are taking a critical look at all the different types of advice that we've been told as professionals, let alone what we've heard as consumers, and we're putting it through the test. You know, we're stress testing this stuff, figuring out, does this hold water or not? And are we going to really be able to help our clients succeed? And I wish I had a definitive way to say, look for this and you're going to be fine. And I don't know if that really exists.
Well, you know, I think the thing you've got to, yeah, I think the thing you, as the consumer, you've got, you need to, you know, Van Mueller, this is his take on this with everything is ask questions. You know, that's what the consumer has to realize. To understand, you've got to ask questions, and you can't just sit in the corner and take someone else's you know, their word for something or take advice from them. Ask questions as it relates to your particular situation, and you know, form your own opinion and form your own belief and what you want. Should make a huge difference in the direction you go with your money. Ask questions that you know, don't be scared to do that. I think so many times I see people, I've sat down with people, I go, you have any questions? And you know, they do, but they don't want to, I don't know if it's, they don't want to sound, you know, ignorant to the fact that they don't know about the product that they're thinking about going into, whether it be their 401k or a Roth IRA, but ask questions, just ask questions.
Well, and I think a lot of it too is a lot of this stuff is scary to most people, or they just don't simply understand it. They go into their financial advisor or their fiduciary and they say, well, what do you recommend? And they don't necessarily, and this is, you know, I probably was in this position before myself, where if I had gone into some financial advisor's office, I would have said, well, what do you recommend? And, you know, just from an everyday common person perspective, you don't necessarily know any better. So whatever they say, you're just going to take pretty much for the most part at face value. And, you know, oh, well, this fund has averaged this, and I think you should put your money here and blah, 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 and do this and that. And, you know, oh, that sounds good. Okay. You know, well, past performance doesn't guarantee future results, first off. And, you know, they don't always take into account all of your necessarily goals and the tax implications and how things can affect you down the road. They just, you know, base their advice based on what, you know, past results have shown them, or whatever their popular fund is for the day. And most people don't even think to ask certain questions because they've never even been told what questions to ask, quite frankly. So how would they even know?
Yeah,
so,
good point.
Yeah, I mean, most people, me too, you know, before I got into all this stuff, I wouldn't have known necessarily what all questions to ask. And that's not necessarily anybody's fault. It's just we're not told or taught the stuff to ask and the things to look for. And so we just put our money wherever, you know, somebody tells us to, or whatever sounds nice. And then when the fit hits the shan later down the line, you're like, well, what happened? I thought, you know, you said that this, you know, product did this and this, and man, you were getting 500% returns for the last 30 years. And who knew, you know, and then all of a sudden when it doesn't do that, everybody wonders what happened. And, you know, of course we go back to the problem too of, if you stop even contributing to it for a certain amount of time. And I know a fund manager that said that his biggest problem is getting people to continuously contribute to the fund. Mm-hmm. And if they would just do that, it would actually maybe not perform as promised, but at least it would perform better. So that goes back to the chart that you were showing, David, where just not contributing for a while or stopping the contributions really messes everything up. And now you have way less than what you thought you would have. And this is not uncommon. I know at least him and many others too that have problems with clients being able to even contribute the money that they thought that they were going to contribute to whatever it is. And that's the difference, is that you got to make sure that you're doing this consistently with whatever product it is that you choose to use if you want to see the results that you expect to see. So you can't just, you know, willy-nilly put a little in here and a little in there and then expect to have this huge amount of money at the end of the day. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah, you can't expect to put in a couple of pennies and expect to have $1 really quickly right away. I mean, it's like, I'm going to give you this little bit, and if you don't perform, I'm going to tell all my friends and family that you suck. So that's not going to be fair for people. But yeah, I could see it on both ends there for consumers, because in a way, I think they want to say, I want this to hurry up and get done. So whatever you tell me, I'm going to do. And then unfortunately, there's some of these advisors that say, well, I'm going to talk up here and you're down here, and I'm going to tell you what you need to do with your money that you earned. And that's just not fair either, because it really should be a collaboration to figure out what you want to accomplish and what we could do to best help you accomplish that on a plan that you can stay consistent with over time, and make sure that there's the mutual respect and understanding that you can ask questions that and it is the big thing. And I was thinking about this earlier. Don't take action on something unless you understand why you're doing it and if it really makes sense for you. Otherwise, don't do it. Now, at the same time, that doesn't mean you can't apply for things. So, for example, if life insurance is part of the conversation, by all means, get the application in. Let's find out if you can even do it, and then determine later, do you want to do this or not? There's no cost, there's no charge or anything with that, because you can always cancel the policy within, I'll just say, 14 days, get any money back that you might have put into the policy, and no problem at all. But we got to make sure that you're making educated decisions that feel right to you, that feels right, that you want to continue to work with. And if not, please don't. I believe that everyone needs to do what's the phrase? It's, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. And so if you don't understand it, just don't do it. You got to be comfortable enough to talk to your advisor and say, I'm just not comfortable with this just yet. No problem. Do you want to keep learning? Do you want me to help you to understand it, or be good? It's up to you. I'm not going to force anything, because quite frankly, I don't like lapses. I want to keep myself in good standing with the companies that I work with. I don't like having the thing that says, if you get a couple more lapses, we're going to terminate your contract. I don't like those kinds of things. I want to make sure that we're doing right for the client that wants to do these kinds of strategies. It's so important. Go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I mean, just to your point there, we've come to realize, working in the space that we're working with, that your expectation from, potential clients is, I want to talk with someone who's obviously, they're serious about their retirement. They're serious about the amount of money that we're talking about, putting into a strategy, or saving, or whatever verbiage you want to use. But you've got to have people that are going to be focused enough to, like Mike said, that are going to stay the course. That's the biggest downfall to being, going back to the rep days of what Mike just mentioned. You've got the guy or the gal on the $50 a month, mutual fund purchase, through their 403B plan, or whatever plan it is, and keeping them to stay on course. Yeah, they may be 25 years old, but $50 a month is honestly not going to, it's not going to create that retirement plan that you think it's going to create when you're 65 or 70 years old. It's just not going to work. And, I had a meeting yesterday with a young lady that, I say young lady, she's my age. She's 54, 55 years old. And she's like, Kurt, I've waited a long time to get started, but I've waited too long. And my question to her was, are you serious about your retirement? And she's like, absolutely. I realize now that I need to be doing something, and not just doing something. I need to be doing the most that I can do. And I said, then if you're serious about your retirement, then we can help you. But you've got to stay focused, and you've got to be serious, and you've got to be willing to maybe make sacrifices in other areas to get the best outcome.
Perfect. Yeah. And of course, I'd rather see someone start with $25, $50 a month than start with nothing. So I'd rather see something. And of course, working with an advisor, you're going to be building that up over time. You can, whether it's mutual funds are easy. You can always put in more, which quite frankly, the company wants your money. There's 4 rules of financial institutions. Let's go over those real quick. The financial institution wants all of your money. They want it on an ongoing systematic basis. They want to hold on to it for as long as possible. And then they want to give back as little as possible. And quite frankly, whether you're a government or you're a financial institution, that's the way it works. And so with mutual funds, that's easy. You can always increase. Better to get something started than nothing. And then, but with life insurance, for example, those are contractually defined. So we often say that, well, you could put unlimited amounts, and that's true. But then, depending on how the contract's structured, you might have to commit to that each and every year for 10 years or whatever it's going to be. So if you need a new contract, as long as you're insurable to get it, we can do that. And if you're not insurable, there's other non-insurable ways to use some of the tax codes with some of these contracts. So, for example, annuities. The vast majority of annuities do not require medical underwriting. So there's opportunities with that. It all, unfortunately, I have to say, and you're going to hear me say it a lot, unfortunately, it all depends. Everything depends on you, your situation, your expectations, what you as a consumer are looking for. And then we could try to customize it based on that and then determine if we're the right type of people to work with on that or not. Some people want a pure investment portfolio. They hate insurance. Okay, you win. You could go somewhere else and I won't be able to help you. But if you like what the life insurance can do and what the tax code says it can do, and I can deliver on that, maybe we should be doing business. Maybe we shouldn't. Depends. So I think we've covered on that. Wow, this went a lot longer than I thought we would. I just wanted to cover the compound interest curve, but we went on a tangent there. But that was beautiful. Any other final thoughts, gentlemen?
Mike?
I think that, no, I was going to say, go ahead, Kurt, if you wanted to say something, but
no, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that this is an important, obviously conversation and topic. I think it's important that whatever financial vehicle you choose to use, as we've seen here, the key is to contribute to it on a consistent basis and to not stop that contribution so that you can get the most out of it, whether that's life insurance or any other financial vehicle that you use. Of course, life insurance is contractually guaranteed to always be worth more, whereas other investments are not, and hence the word investment. There is implied risk and implied risk of loss. So at least, if whatever path you decide to go down, be sure to keep contributing to it so that you don't lose that forward momentum, certainly during the accumulation years, so that you'll have the necessary amount or the amount that you think you'll need during the distribution years. And if you're going to use a 401k or some other asset, just hope and pray that when you do need it, the market doesn't go down or the taxes don't go up. That's, the obvious implied risk with those investments. But again, make sure that you are doing at least something, even if it is, right, like $50 a month, like you said, Kinder, and that's all you can do for now. At least do that and start contributing and start doing something. And something is always better than nothing. And that way, when you do need it, it'll be there for you. And you can always do more later when you have the funds available, and make sure that, you can always cut down on those miscellaneous expenses that you don't necessarily have to have, different things like that, so that you can contribute more. That's just typical advice that most financial advisors would give you to, cut out things out of your budget that you don't necessarily need, but keep the necessities and not necessarily the niceties is another way to put it. So, Kurt.
Hey, I'm going to leave it at that. That's a good way to end it.
That'll work too. Yeah. Although if you tell me I have to give up my In-N-Out burger, I'm telling you, work harder on my plan, because I swear there's certain things are non-negotiable. I'm just telling you, that should be the last area to figure out. I like it being, if I have to get into your lifestyle to help you do things, how likely are you to keep at it? Probably not as well. You've really got to commit to that.
Yeah.
But if I can find other money in other areas and redirect that,
exactly,
where there's where you don't have a loss of enjoyment in your life, and you don't have a loss of something else that generally just doesn't matter as much to you, by all means, we want to take care of that all day long.
And that's
last would be the lifestyle.
And that's a lot of what we do when we have client meetings, is we find other areas where maybe they're losing money where they don't have to be, and kind of reallocate that money to things that'll help earn them more.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing that we do a lot for people, is help them remanage and reallocate some things so that they can get more advantage out of the products that they decide to put money into.
What's the teaser for next week? We know yet?
Oh, gee, no, I don't
Put him on the
know.
spot. Put him on the spot.
You had to put me on. Look, right now I'm working on a white paper, not really a white paper, but an article regarding the Supreme Court decision made last week regarding business succession planning and entity buy sells. And like, I barely got to get my head wrapped around it, let alone write the article. So,
Oh, wow.
I'm mentally I'm frazzled just thinking about that topic. So,
Well, we'll just come off the hip next week.
yeah, there we go. All right. Well, everybody look forward to next week when we come off the hip. All right.
All right.
Bye.